Here we are at the Big Spring Park on March the 11th, our Brittle Best Matter Fukushima Fallout event. And there's not too many people participating today, but there are a bunch of important people here. Stuart Horn, Gretel Johnston, and myself, Gary Morgan. And we have Jaeger. We have Jaeger the Wonder Dog, and we also have BB. BB the Marvelous Wonder Dog. This is Miss Gretel Johnson, the founder of Mothers Against Tennessee River Radiation. Gretel, can you tell us a little bit why this event's important to you?
Right. Well, so much of the information about Fukushima, the man-made disaster, there were two natural disasters that happened, the earthquake and the tsunami. But the Fukushima Daiichi meltdowns at the nuclear power plant there were actually man-made disaster. They could have been prevented. And we hope to prevent such a disaster from happening in the Tennessee Valley, especially at the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant, which is the same design as the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. It's a GE Mark I reactor, and there are 3 reactors there. And the design has lots and lots of waste that has been accumulating for decades there. In fact, there are over 3 million pounds of radioactive fuel that's been irradiated in the reactors. It's much more powerful than when the fuel goes in. When it goes in there, it creates 200 poisons called radionuclides that do not exist in nature. And what happens is that there are emissions that are routinely released from all nuclear power reactors because of the buildup of heat. The emissions are released routinely in the air and in the water. And these radionuclides that don't exist in nature are mimic what our bodies do, what the human body does and other organisms, is that we try to make sense of them when we come in contact with them. And we find what they're closest to in nature. And for instance, there's one called cesium-137, and our body thinks it's potassium because that's what it's most closely related to, even though it's an unnatural element. It closely resembles potassium. It's an analog that's really showing up in the Fukushima children right now. Is the iodine isotopes attack the thyroid, and that's so many people got thyroid cancer after Chernobyl because of that release. But they attack the thyroid, and a study just came out about 5 weeks ago. Then the Japanese government did a study of 95,000 children in the Fukushima prefecture, and they found a 44% abnormality of those children. 44% of them. So they did a study, a control study for this study of 95,000 children. They did a control study of 4,300 children in 3 cities that were far away from Fukushima, and they found that they had a 56% abnormality. So the plume was moving around Japan. And if you go to our website at Nuclear Disasters page, on that page there's a section about Fukushima, and you can see in the right column how the cesium-137 that I was talking about, that's the analog for potassium, has is spreading across the Pacific Ocean, and also they had sampled soil all around Japan, and you can see how much it's spread around the soil in Japan. It's particularly dangerous because it's taken up by the grass, and the cows and the goats eat the grass, and then children drink the milk, and it's very dangerous. These cancers, according to Dr. Helen Caldicott, who used to be a professor of medicine at Harvard and at the Massachusetts General Hospital, according to Helen Caldicott, most of cancers will start showing up in 2 to 5 years, and then the worst solid cancers will start showing up in 15 years.
Now, we've been hearing news reports that there is no health effects from Fukushima, adverse health effects. Is that true?
That's completely false, because you cannot say that without waiting for 5 years and 15 years to see how it's affecting the health. Of course, the study that they just did of the 95,000 children, that study showed a 44% abnormality in those children's thyroids, which means that they are affected by the radionuclides, and the iodine has affected their thyroids. Now, what happens is that when a radionuclide gets into a cell, it changes the DNA. It completely changes the structure of the cell. So that some people are resistant and don't get cancer, but other people do. So the thing is that it raises the chance of cancer, especially in children. Multiple studies, international studies and U.S. studies, have shown that children who live near nuclear power plants are twice as likely to get childhood leukemia.
And where can folks go and read that peer-reviewed study?
You can read it at matrr.org.
Hey, Ms. Johnson, thanks a lot. This is Stuart Horn, a member of Brittle Best Matter.
There are several serious design defects with the 3 reactors at Browns Ferry.
And I understand those reactors at Browns Ferry are identical to the reactors at Fukushima.
That is correct. They are identical. And they have the fuel pool stored directly above the reactor, and they're far more dangerous than creating.
Now, we are at Big Spring Parks here, Stuart. How many miles are we from Browns Ferry?
I think we're approximately 20 or 25. I'm not sure.
28.
How many, Gary? 28?
From right here, city center.
28 miles from downtown Huntsville.
By the way the crow flies.
By the way the crow flies. And we're often downwind of Browns Ferry.
That's right. Anything else you want to add?
They're considering using MOX fuel, which is plutonium, in those. They're doing an experiment in the reactors at Browns Ferry with plutonium fuel, which is much more deadly than normal uranium-based fuel. And that they should never experiment with any commercial nuclear reactor, especially ones in our neighborhood.
Yeah, as old as Browns Ferry is, which was activated in the early 70s.
Browns Ferry is now authorized to operate for 50% longer than it was designed to operate, and has been permitted by the NRC to do such a thing, and they're at the end of their 40-year lifestyle right now, and have just been given another 20.
Yeah. Now, I've also heard that there's some fire problems, that Browns Ferry, the TVA at Browns Ferry has not met their responsibility for complying to fire regulations.
That's exactly right. And they are the cause of those fire regulations. When they had the fire back in the late 70s or early 80s, that caused all of these regulations to come forth from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they are still 25 years later or longer, they're still not in compliance with those regulations. Beyond belief that the NRC, who regulates them, has allowed this to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. I'm Gary Morgan. I'm a member of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, the Bellefonte Efficiency and Sustainability Team, and we are here at Big Springs Park doing a Fukushima Fallout. Now, you've heard from Ms. Gretel Johnston, a member of Brittle Best Matter, and also Mr. Stuart Horn, a member of Brittle Best Matter. And we didn't have a lot of people show up here today, but for the 3 of us that have showed up, we're definitely dedicated and